Okay, so we are in the middle of a discussion about different things that divide up boundaries. So on the bottom of Nun Ham and Aleph, we started talking about boundaries, things that are delineated as borders, and this chutzah plant. If that is in the middle of the field, it divides up the field, and therefore, if you acquire one part of the field and you have this chutzah plant growing, so that if you've acquired the right side of the field, you have not acquired what's on the left side of the chutzah plant, because that really divides up the field into two. So then we ended up bringing a Mishnah about peah. We said this applies not only to this only applies to acquiring things, but it does not apply to peah and tumah. That was the first opinion. And we brought this Mishnah in peah that talked about all these different cases, and if you have it running through your field, it's going to divide the field into two. And yet Chatzev is not on there. Right. Just to say it, we had a machlokes of Chatzev divides a field for peah and for tumah, or only divides it for acquisition. The first opinion was Rav Atzi and Shimon Rav Yochanan. It only can divide a field for the halachas of acquiring, but not for peah and for tumah. And Ravin said in the name of Rav Yochanan that it even divides the field up for peah and for tumah. But to that we brought the Mishnah in peah that talked about all the different things that divide up a field. And now we're asking, what about tumah? What's the case of tumah? So you go into an area with a lot of fields, and you know that in one of the fields there is a dead body, maybe a grave, maybe a dead body. You come back, and the Gemara says on the fifth line of Nun Hamid Beis, "V'amar halachti lemakom halaz, ve'eni yodeya im nichnasti la'oso makom imla." I know I walked into that general area. I'm just not sure if I ended up going to that field that has a dead body. Halacha is Rabbi Dovid Gleizer Chachamim metamin. Rabbi Dovid hold these tar, Chachamim hold these tummy. Why? And what does that have to do with our discussion of splitting up a field? So Rabbi Dovid holds a second staker here. There are two doubts. There's one doubt, did you even walk into the field that has tumah, that has impurity? And the second doubt is, even if you did walk into that field, did you come in contact with that which is impure? So since there are two doubts here, he holds the person is pure. The Chachamim say, no, really you're tummy. Why? Because the Chachamim, they don't view all these different lands as different lands. They have one suffix. You walked into a field, did you or did you not touch the body? So we see that Rabbi Eliezer is the one who makes these division of lands. He's the one that when you walk in the area of many fields, that if it has delineated boundaries, so he'll say that they're all separate. While the Chachamim, they view them all as one. Yeah. So Shahaya Rabbi Eliezer Omer Safek Bia Tahor. Rabbi Eliezer holds Safek when you go into somewhere and you're not sure if you became Tameh or not. So he says you are a Tahor. But Safek Maga Toma Tameh. Okay, even he'll agree if you say I might have touched its dead body, well then okay, fine. Then you'll for sure be Tameh. Why? Because that's only one Safek. So that the Rashbam says, Rabbi Eliezer is the one that if there's a meitzar, the border or a chatzef plant in the middle, and there's tumah somewhere, so he'll take that into consideration in rendering his halakhic opinion. So too, so we see that he agrees that a chatzef or a boundary is enough to divide up the land. Yeah. Fine. So that is the case by Tuma. However, even if you'll agree that this halacha applies not only by acquiring things, but by payam, by Tuma, but even you will agree that what by Shabbos is not going to apply. So what's the case by Shabbos? Aval Shabbos, low, but by Shabbos is not going to apply. Rava Amar, no, it'll apply even to Shabbos. What's the case? So we know that there are different amounts for different malachas that you have to do to be liable. So, for instance, when you write down on Shabbos, you need to write 2 letters. What about when you carry from a private domain to a public domain, or from a public domain to a private domain? The halacha is if you carry a grogeres, which is a fig's worth, from one domain to another, then you are liable. Then you are chayiv. So we're going to see now, what if you carry half of a fig's worth from a private domain to a public domain, and another half of a fig's worth to another public domain? Basically, we're going to see what divides up a public domain when it comes to Shabbos. So let's see. Vitanya, hotzi chatzi regeres, or shisarabim. You carry half of a fig to a public domain from a private domain. V'hinicha, and you put it down. One of the halachas of carrying on Shabbos is you have to have a kira and a hanach. It's the first mishnah in Shabbos. You have to uproot the object and put down the object. V'chazer, then you went back. V'hotzi chatzi regeres acheres, and you went and you took out another half of a fig's worth and you put it down. Behelim echad chayiv. B'shnei halamos pater. So behelim echad means in one forgetfulness. B'shnei halamos is in 2 forgetfulnesses. So meaning you go and you totally forgot it was Shabbos. You had no idea. You took a half a fig's worth and you put it in Rosh Hashanah. You went back and took another half a fig's worth and put it down in Rosh Hashanah. So if nobody told you it was Shabbos in the interim, so that's where you're going to be chayiv to bring a korban chatas. However, if let's say after your first outing, someone told you, by the way, today's Shabbos. Oh my gosh, it's Shabbos. And then somehow you forgot again. That's called in 2 forgetfulnesses. Kishnei halamos. There you're going to be patur. That's a special halacha by bringing a korban chatas. It has to be done behelim echad. Okay, so far nothing related to us. However, Rabbi Yossi Omer, he argues and he says, behelim echad, b'rshus achas chayiv, even when it's only one helam echad, when it's in one forgetfulness, one state of forgetfulness, but you have to put it down in one rishus. However, if you do it b'shtei rishuyos, patur. So if you have to put it down in one public domain. You put half of a fig in one public domain, half a fig in the other public domain. Those are 2 public domains, and for that he holds you are not going to be chayav. Chayav v'chatos. You still did the wrong thing, but you won't be chayav with korban chatos. Yeah, the Amar Rabba, but this only true. So Rabbi says, what's considered 2 public domains? When there's a chiyuv chatas beinehem, which means there's a reshus hayachas, a private domain separating 2 public domains. It's called a chiyuv chatas because it's that case where if you were to take from a private domain to public domain, you'd be liable. So Rabbi says this idea that you're patur from bringing a korban is only in 2 domains. Oh, hold on. What separates 2 public domains from each other in terms of bringing a korban chatas? Rabbi says there has to be a reshus hayachid in the middle. However, if there's a carmelist, then so we know that a carmelist is this in between, right? Biblically, we only have a private domain, which is going to be 4 amos and 10 tefachim high with walls. And Rosh Hashanah is going to be, 16 amos. 16 amos. So what do you, and Rosh Hashanah is a place where, many people travel through. Some opinions you need 600,000 people to travel through. So what happens if you have a regular street? You have 15th Rabbi Rower, Texas Street, right? So those cases, even though they're wider than 4 amos, but you don't have, it's not considered a public thoroughfare. So rather, that's considered a carmelis, right? We know that you can't put an Eruv on a Rosh Hashanah. So if your city has an Eruv, it means they're putting it in a place that's a carmelis, not a Rosh Hashanah. So a carmelis has different halachas rabbinically. So what if a carmelis is separating this Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah's example of a carmelis is a bikah, is like a valley, right? It might be a wide area, but it's not a place where there's a public thoroughfare. It won't be considered a Rosh Hashanah. So it has some of the characteristics of Rosh Hashanah, but not all of them. If that's in between 2 public domains, says Rabbah, so then that's not considered 2 public domains. And if you were to carry half of a fig on one side of the carmelis in Rosh Hashanah and half the fig on the other, so that's where Rabbi Yossi says you'll not be liable to chatos. Abaye argues, Abaye Amar, afilu carmelis. No, even if a carmelis separates this Rosh Hashanah, it's enough to separate into 2. And if you were to put half a fig on one side and half it on the other side, that'll still be considered 2 domains. And Rabbi Yossi will not obligate you to bring a katos. Aval pisla lo. Pisla, it's like a little piece of wood, a little stick, or a little piece of wood, some kind of maybe a rock, but it's not 10 tefachim high. It's not for almost wide, so it doesn't have that those characteristics. So what if you have such a place? So such a place is called a makom ptur, and rabbinically, you're allowed to carry from there to Rosh Hashanah, and from Rosh Hashanah onto this stone, or onto this little wooden area, because it's totally nullified to its surrounding. It doesn't have its own chashivas. It's not considered its own place. So if that's separating the 2 Rosh Hashanah, this nice little stone or this wooden area, this nice little stick, so then that's not enough to separate a Rosh Hashanah into 2. It's 2, it's 2 not chashuv, it's 2 not significant, it's insignificant, and therefore that will not separate it.
2 by 2 by 2.
Right, exactly. 2 by 2 by 2, exactly. A 2 by 2 by 2, yeah, a beamer, exactly. Even a 2 by 4, right? As long as that's not tall, it's not 10 tefachim tall, so then we're good. Now, why do we need this for the next line? We brought this all for the next line. Rava Amar afilu pisla. Rava has a tremendous novelty, has a tremendous chiddush that what? Even if you have this area 2 by 2 by 2, so that would still be enough to separate this Rosh Hashanah into 2. And therefore, if you carry half of a fig's worth on one side of this 2 by 2 by 2, and half of a fig's worth on the other side, so it still is significant enough to divide into 2. We consider that 2 public domains, and according to Rabbi Yossi, you would not be chayiv a korban chatas if you did this on Shabbos. Yeah, right. Now, the Rashbam says this stone area, this wood area, is no worse than our chitzvah plant. So if Rava agrees that this pisla can separate, he'll agree also that this chitzvah plant can also separate into 2. Just kidding. How do you translate the word meitzah? Meitzah of a chitzvah. Border? Came up earlier. Yeah. Sorry, sorry. boundary. Yeah, I guess. Right. So if you have a boundary and a chitzvah plant, so then that is the same as this pisla, right? So if Rava would agree that a pisla divides up this wooden area, the stone area, he'll for sure agree that a boundary, or a chitzvah plant is also significant enough to divide up a field. So once again, there was a statement that when it comes to acquiring things, a boundary, something which delineates the field, has two parts to it, or this chutzah plant, that's enough to delineate a field into two for acquisitions. Then there was a machlokes about peya and tuma. Some said yes, and some said it's not significant enough. And then there's a following machlokes that even if you'll agree to peya and tuma, but what about Shabbos? So that was also machlokes. Is a chitzvah, a meitzar, and a chitzvah enough to separate the field into two for this rule? And the opinion that said yes was referring to the opinion of Rava that said that a pisla is actually enough to divide up a public domain into two, and so he'll for sure agree that a chitzvah, a little plant, would also be enough to divide up a field into two. Okay, now this is Rava L'Tameh. This is Rava's own opinion from another area. He's in line with his own opinion, which is good. The Amar Rava, Rishus Shabbos, Kirishus Gittin Dami. So now, what does that mean? So it's an interesting case. A husband wants to divorce his wife. So we know that you have to give a divorce document either in her hand or in her domain. So apparently you don't really want to give it into her hand. So what do? You give her a chutzah, you give her a courtyard. And once you gave her a courtyard, now you can just throw the divorce document into the courtyard, and that'll be enough for her to be divorced. Except, what happened? You threw the divorce document, and where did it land? It landed on one of these 2x2x2s. It landed on the stone area or on some wooden area. So that pisla is not. So is that pisla part of the courtyard, and she's divorced or not? So Rava says in the Seches Gittin that we view this pisla, the stone area, this 2x2x2, as its own separate entity, and it's not included in the chatzar. So even though you gave her a courtyard, so now that courtyard belongs to her, and as long as you put something in her domain, she's divorced. But now you put it in, where did it land? It landed on this 2x2x2 area. That's considered its own entity, and therefore she would not be considered divorced. So too, he says by Shabbos, this pisla is considered a significant place, enough that it could divide up a public domain into two public domains. Yeah. So that's Rava. So Rava by Gittin, has such an opinion that this is significant enough to not be part of the courtyard. So by Shabbos, he's in line with that opinion that it's significant enough to divide up a Rosh Hashanah, a public domain, into two. Okay. Continuing. So now, let's say you have a field. Once again, you have a field of an ichsei ger, or just a way to refer to an ownerless field. And now this field has nothing on it. Well, like you have a 3,000 acre field. How much of the field, so right, there's nothing that's delineating the field. And you go and acquire part of the field. How much of the field is yours? So how do you know? I mean, this convert who died, right? How do we know how much of the field is his? That now that he died, it's ownerless and you can acquire it. Do we just assume that until our eye can see, that whole area was his? How do you stop? So the Gemara says an interesting definition. So ein sham lo meitzar v'lo chatzav. There's no boundary. There's no chatzav plant. My pireish rav marinos mishmo kol shenikres al shmo. any part of the field that was called on his name. So what does that mean? They call this, the fig area. I mean, referring to the field, the field of Ploni. So now, if they refer to the whole 3,000 acre field as the field of Ploni, so then that's the part that's ownerless that you could acquire. But let's say, they only refer to the part from, I don't know, the street to the fifth light pole. That was the distance. That was always referred to as the field of Ploni. So that's the amount that's ownerless. But it just depends how it was referred to. Yeah, okay. So that's how you know. Okay, fine. Continuing. Yosef Rav Acha bar Avia Kamed Rav Asi. Rav Acha, the son of Avia, was sitting in front of Rav Asi. Yosef Amar Meshmed Rav Asi bar Chanina, and he was saying something in the name of Rav Asi bar Chanina. So, Chatzuva mafsik b'nechsei ager. A chatzuva separates. It's a separation in the field of an Ixayer. It divides the field up. So, Mai Chatzuva. So, this is, right, we're just really repeating what we know already. It's this Chatzav plant. So, what is this Chatzuva? Yeah. The Rashbam says, what exactly is it and why does it have significance? This specific plant has significance that if it's in the middle of a field, it divides the field up into two. Sounds like not any plant can do this, only the Chatzuva plant. So it says the Gemara, Ma'i Chatzuva. What about it is significant that it has such a power, it could divide up a field into two. And once again, therefore, if you would acquire only one side of the field, you would not acquire the second part of the field. You have to go and do a separate acquisition on the part that's on the other side of the Chatzuv plant. Amar Bihuda Amar Rav, Shabo Techam Yoshua Yisrael. When Yeshua went into Eretz Yisrael and he had to make boundaries for all the different tribes, so what did he use? He used a Chatzuv plant. Shabo Techam Yeshua Yisrael as arts. And we saw earlier that this Chatzuv plant, it doesn't, when you plant it, the roots go straight down. It doesn't take any sustenance from the right side or from the left side. So that's a very good thing when you want to make boundaries. Because let's say, I'm just thinking now, let's say it would spread its wings, it would go out. So then the person living on the right side, could start having claims on the guy living on the left side. You're getting sustenance from my property, you're drinking from my property. This way, this special plant goes straight down, and Yeshua planted that, and that separated the borders of the tribes. Not only, I think, of the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, the Rashbam says, "Bein shevet l'shevet, bein ish l'ish," because this is one that really avoids any disagreement. Yeah. So Amar Yehuda, Amar Shabotein Yeshua Yisrael's art. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Lo Mani Yeshua El Ayaros Ha'omis Ala Gvulin. So the boundaries that are in Sefer Yeshua, so the ones that are listed in Sefer Yeshua are the ones that are standing on the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. So to show you where the boundaries are, the different cities that are mentioned that they had earlier, way back, the Rashbam says on Yedalad on the base, it lists different boundaries, different cities. Those cities that are listed in Sefer Yeshua are the ones that are on the boundaries. Tosu says it doesn't necessarily mean only on the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. It also means on the boundaries of all the tribes. Okay, but basically Yeshua and what's written in Sefer Yeshua, the different boundaries. So those are the ones that he used the Chatzav plant, and they separated between, the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael and the boundaries of all the tribes. Okay. More about Eretz Yisrael. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. We had this last parsha 2 weeks ago. Kol Shirei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. We know Moshe couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. However, he went up on the mountain and he saw Eretz Yisrael. So what's the significance of him seeing Eretz Yisrael? Kol she'harei HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe chayiv b'maiser. Very interesting. Whatever Moshe Rabbeinu was showed by Hashem, whatever he looked into, it's those areas that are chayiv and meiser. That you be chayiv to bring your meiser. So what is that? So those are the 7 nations that are mentioned all throughout Chumash. So what's that? La fuke mai. Are we excluding anything? So we say, yeah, la fuke, kini, knizi, v'kadmoni. So the Rashbam explains that those 3 were also promised to Avram Avinu in the famous covenant, the famous Bein HaBasarim. However, if those lands would be conquered by Yehoshua, they'd be patur from Meiser. That's not what Hashem showed Moshe. Even though we are going to get those lands back, but those aren't the lands that Hashem showed Moshe. So therefore, even if they would be conquered by the Jews, they would not be chayiv. They would not be chayiv in Meiser. Yeah. Tanya, Rabbi Meir Omer, Naftucha, Arava, V'Shalma. So these 3 things, Naftucha, Arava, V'Shalma, what are they? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Har Seir, Ammon, Umoab. Those 3 nations are, that's that right. The Kini, the Knizi, the Kadmoni, Rav Meir says are the Naftucha, Arava, V'Shalma. Rabbi Yehuda says it's Har Seir, Ammon, Umoab, and Rabbi Shimon says it's the Ardiscus, Asya, the Asafmaya, different countries. I don't know which parts of the world they're referring to, but so we have 3 opinions of where exactly is this Kini, Knizi, and Kadmoni. Okay, and that really concludes our long Mishnah that who can make a chazaka and who cannot make a chazaka. New Mishnah. Hayu shnayim me'idim oso sha'ach l'shalosh shanim v'nimtzu zomen mashlimin lo es hakol. Okay, so we know that we're already experts in the fact that if you're there for 3 years, so then that establishes a chazaka and the land belongs to you. So let's say you have witnesses that came and they said Reuben was here for 3 years, and let's give it he was in Portland for 3 years and he had a chazaka and therefore it belongs to him. And then what happens? They become Edom Zoman. Edom Zoman doesn't just mean you have to contradict their testimony. That's called Edei HaChasha. To disagree, but you have to basically testify that these witnesses were not able to testify about what they're testifying. So if they come and say, we were in Portland and we saw Reuben acquire the field for 3 years, and then 2 other witnesses come and say, I don't know how you were in Portland. We've been your neighbors for 3 years in South Africa, and and it's impossible that you were there for 3 years. Something like that. But they'd be considered Edom Zomer. And what's the rule? Whatever the false witnesses tried to obligate the person that they're testifying about, that's what they have to pay. Meaning, if this field cost $1,000 and they tried to make the original owner lose out his field, now they would own the original owner. They would own the owner of the field $1,000. So that's what it says. 2 witnesses saw someone using a field for 3 years, the Nimtzu Zoman, and now they're found to be Edom Zoman. It was impossible that they were around there for 3 years. So their testimony is totally impossible that ever happened. Mashlim and lo esakol, they now need to pay whatever they tried to testify and make the owner of the field lose out on. That's how much they need to pay. Now, another case of witnesses for a field. Let's say instead of having 2 witnesses for 3 years, it gets divided up. Shnayim barishona. So 2 witnesses come and say, Reuben used the field in 2024. Shnayim b'shniya and Shnayim b'shlishis. You have 6 witnesses, 3 pairs of witnesses. Turning the page. Each one testifies on a different year. So what happens? So now, Mishalshalin beinehem. So now, if these three pairs of witnesses are found to be Edom Zomen, they have to divide up the penalty between them. So if it's a $1,000 field that they try to make the owner lose out on, they each need to divide it into three, and they each are going to owe that money.
So all of them are Edom Zomen.
Yeah, all six of them. Yeah, failed attempt.
What happens if only two of them?
That's a good question. Okay, so let's think. Let's think. The first year you have two witnesses, they're fine. Second year you have two other witnesses, they're fine. The third year you have two witnesses, they're found to be
I'm assuming these are all coming approximately the same.
there's a line here. But that just means, right? Meaning, if one of the two is found to be a zombie, that's not going to be good. And I think each group, it would seem to me that it's all separate witnesses, separate eidos. But now, I guess what you're going to, they try to lose out on a third of the field. Okay.
But do they come to a year apart, or are they?
Oh, when are they coming?
Yeah, because I think that makes a difference.
Are they all coming together or all coming separately? Right. If they're all coming together, maybe you need them all to be zomen.
Well, no, because you still don't have 83.
Why? If they all come together?
If they come together and one pair are zomen,
right?
You don't have testimony for that year.
Right. Correct. Oh, meaning got it. Once you have one pair that's zomen, now you have only good testimony for 2 years, and 2 years establishes nothing.
Right.
Okay, good question. Okay, good question. Good. Yeah, let's see. Okay, next case in the Mishnah. 3 brothers. So Shlosha Achim, the Echad Mitzaref Imahan. So there's 3 brothers. Each brother was there for 1 year. And there's a 4th guy who's testifying about all 3 years. So the first year, Bruin said, I was here this year. And this guy, Yaakov says, yeah, he was here for this year. Then Shimon comes and says, his brother comes and says, I was here year 2. And same thing, Yaakov comes and says, yep, he was there year 2. And then Levi comes and says, I was here year 3. And Yaakov says, yeah, he was here year 3. So now what happens? Hare elu shalosh edios. This is considered 3. I mean, even though they're brothers, and usually brothers testify together, but it's 3 separate testimonies. You never had 2 brothers testifying together. So Reuven and Yaakov, that's 1 testimony. Shimon and Yaakov is a 2nd testimony. Levi and Yaakov is a 3rd testimony. However, but when it comes to hazama, so if they're all found to be Edom Zomen, so then the Rashbam says that they're not going to be considered Zomen until they're all Hozam together. So meaning for Edom Zomen, you need all 3 brothers to be found to be Edom Zomen. And only then are they obligated to pay. Is that the same as your case, Steve? I think so, no? No?
Yeah.
You have 3 pairs of 2 witnesses. I think if all the witnesses are trying to establish a chazaka, you have three pairs of two witnesses, or you have three brothers testifying on separate years, so then the halacha is, let's look it up in Makos, it says here Daf Yomi Bava. The halacha is that they're not considered zomin until they're all found to be zomin. So that's the chiddush here. We split, meaning for testimony, the fact that they're brothers, we don't care because they're not testifying on the same testimony. Year one is not. However, when it comes to zomin, that they are considered one testimony. Okay. So says the Gemara, our Mishnah, Masisim Glok Rabbi Akiva. So now we're going to get involved in general halachas of witnesses, and because in our case you're testifying for only really part of a testimony for 1 year. 1 year is nothing. You need 3 years. Yet our Mishnah says it is something. So this Mishnah is not like Rabbi Akiva. Why not like Rabbi Akiva? Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Yikish Halach Abba Chlafta Eitz Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. When Abba Chlafta went to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Lilmo Torah to go learn Torah from him, V'amri la Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Eitz Abba Chlafta, or the other way. Some say it was when Rabbi Yochanan went to go learn by Abba Chlafta Lilmo Torah. Amar lo, either Rabbi Yochanan said Abba Chlafta or Abba Chlafta to Rabbi Yochanan. Hareisha Achla Shana Rishona B'fnei Shnayim. Let's say Reuben used the field in front of two witnesses, year one, and then year two in front of two other witnesses, Shnia B'fnei Shnayim. Shlishis B'fnei Shnayim. The third year is also in front of two witnesses. Mahu. What's the halacha? So you have each pair of witnesses only testifying on 1/3 of what we need to establish Reuven as the owner of this field. Amar lo harezu chazaka. So that's fine. That's fine. That's a valid chazaka. Amar lo afani omer ke. I also agree to you. So Rabbi Yochanan and Abba Chlafta are both in agreement. However, who's not in agreement? That's Rabbi Akiva. Elosh Rabbi Akiva cholik b'davar zeh. Rabbi Akiva disagrees to this. Hi, Rabbi Akiva Omer. He understands the pasuk. The pasuk says, by witnesses, that you need 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses. Yakum davar, the matter has to be established. Says Rabbi Akiva, davar v'lo chetzi davar. You have to testify on the full matter and not on half of a matter. So in this case, each witness is only testifying on part of a matter. You're not testifying on a full matter. Davar v'lo chetzi davar. So too. So since he has that rule, testifying for 1 year is not going to be enough because you have to testify on a complete matter, on a davar shuling. Excuse me, on a davar shuling. Okay, so that's very nice. The Rabbanan, what are they going to do with this pasuk? They also agree that there's such a drasha that we expound this pasuk davar v'lo chetzi davar. However, they obviously argue because they agree to our Mishnah. So what are they going to use this for? So now, okay, so a little complicated, but basically a girl becomes a status of a nara when she has 2 hairs. So machlokas, what kind of hairs you need? Either it's going to be 2 pubic hairs, or it's 2 hairs on any part of her body, and there's a further machlokas if they have to be in the same spot, or they can even be in different spots. So now, let's say you hold that it has to be on different spots. You have 2 witnesses that went and saw 1 hair in the back, and then 2 witnesses saw 1 hair in the front. Now they come and say, this girl has reached a level of naras. Is that considered valid, or is that not valid? So says the Gemara, maybe the Rabbanan use this drasha, davar v'lo chetzi davar, to exclude that case. So the Gemara says, hold on, if 1 witness says there's a hair in the back, and 1 witness says there's a hair in the front, that's not half of a matter. That's half of an edus. Only 1 witness for each hair. That's not going to be good. So what is it? It must be coming to exclude where you have 2 witnesses. You have a full edus on half of a matter, and you have a full edus on the other half. So 2 edim, which is a full edus, complete, right? But they're only testifying on half of a matter, on 1 hair, which is only half of what you need to establish adulthood. And then the other 2 witnesses are testifying on the other hair. So really combined together, you should have full testimony. Says the Torah, davar v'lo chetzi davar, that it's only testimony on half of a matter. And maybe we'll continue tomorrow. All the Rishonim are bothered by what's the difference between this and our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says 2 witnesses for 1 year is good. 2 witnesses for 1 year is not good.